Good afternoon and welcome. It is Pennsylvania Healthy Lands Week, which is an excellent time for us to reflect on the stewardship that we can do to help preserve Pennsylvania's natural, historic, and cultural resources. Today we have a special Lunch and Learn presentation where we're going to talk a little bit about a certain way that you can be a supporter of historic resources and answer a question that maybe you didn't know you were asking, which is, what is a docent? Perhaps you've met a docent, or maybe a more modern term might be a tour guide or a period actor at a historic site, but it's really all about sharing knowledge and enlightening people about what's going on at a particular place. So what I'd like to do today is kind of start off with some introductions, and we'll share a little bit of photos and video, and then we'll get into our discussion. So welcome to our guests today. Well, first of all, I'm Amy Hill. I am the host. I am coordinating all of the events surrounding Pennsylvania Healthy Lands Week. And with us is Susan Ellis. She's the executive director of the Moravian Historical Society. And we also have Rusty Baker, who's the executive director of the PA Museums organization. So let's start with you, Susan. Tell us what the Moravian Historical Society is.
Sure. Well, thanks, Amy. Let's see. The Moravian Historical Society was actually founded in 1857. That makes us the third oldest historical society in Pennsylvania. We're located in Nazareth, which is in Pennsylvania's Lehigh Valley region. Our museum is home to some of America's rarest treasures. We really illustrate Pennsylvania's contributions to American industry, education, music, art. I'd say many of the items on exhibit are really rare or one of a kind, including the 1776 Tannenberg organ, which will celebrate its 250th birthday next year along with the country. That organ was played for George Washington, so that's always popular with our guests. The first piano and first violin made in America, really significant collection of early musical instruments. Personal accounts from the 1700s and objects related to the Revolutionary War. So we share the stories of the Moravians, who were an early religious group who settled here. They were the town founders of Pennsylvania's Nazareth, Bethlehem, Emmaus, Lidditz. So lots of Pennsylvania communities. So yeah, that's who we are.
So we have a few photos here, I think, to give a sense of the place where you come from and where you're located. So can you just talk a little bit about what we're looking at here?
Sure. We care for two 18th century historic structures. The one on the left is referred to as the Whitfield House. It was started in 1740 and completed in 1743. And then on the right is the 1740 Gray Cottage. It stands today as the oldest surviving Moravian structure in North America.
Wow. And the next slide has some of the people we're going to be talking about today, correct?
Yeah. Those are all, we call her Sister Sarah. Sarah Heriniak is one of our docents or education specialists. We were changing up the names of our positions here, but she, as you can see, loves to get dressed up and really enjoys the sharing Moravian heritage with our visitors.
Right. And one of the features that you have, I think, is where somebody like Sarah and some of the other tour guides you have can lead on a walking tour, right? So
Sure.
I think we have a little video clip that shows a little bit about what your guests might experience. Can we share the video?
I'm Victoria, and this is Jerry, and we're standing outside of the Whitfield House. Today, we're surrounded by trees, roads, telephone wires, and all sorts of modern materials. But these things were not always here. Thousands of years ago, the Lenape people settled on these lands. And then hundreds of years later, European religious settlers, known as the Moravians, came to this area. They packed up all their worldly belongings in trunks and sailed all the way across the ocean to come and start a new life here.
Terrific. I think we don't have to share the screen anymore now. So that is a wonderful little example, I think, of what you might encounter if you came to visit the Moravian Historical Society. So thank you for that introduction. Rusty, tell us about what PA Museums is all about.
PA Museums is a statewide trade association for folks who work in the museum field for the institutions that exist in Pennsylvania. We're a non-government, nonprofit. We're kind of an older statewide association. We were founded around 1906. We have about 400 members that support PA Museums and our programs and initiatives. We do educational programming to help develop the workforce. And we also advocate for museums in Harrisburg, not only for the funding for museums, but for, just about any legislative measure that's going to touch on museums or historical organizations. Many of our members host special events and host educational programs themselves, and state regulations bump into that all the time with, your staff who work with children should have statewide clearances, that kind of thing. If you have an event, what are the rules for serving alcohol, or can you have a raffle? All of these kinds of things that are wrapped up in the law. PA Museums is located in Harrisburg for that reason, close to the Capitol. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but I've been with PA Museums about 20 years, and we've gone through some evolution over time. We were once the Pennsylvania Federation of Museums and Historical Societies, and of course that had to be shortened. So that's why we're PA Museums today.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. Well, welcome to both of you. Part of Healthy Lands Week is really thinking about that spirit of conservation. And I know many people might, their first thought might go to the environment and, conservation of natural resources. But I think conservation of historical resources is just as important. It's so important, I think, for people today to know what happened here and how do we get here. And, there's so much living history that is really important for us to understand about the world around us. And sometimes it's hard to accept the history, and sometimes it's very enlightening. And I think sometimes we take for granted why Pennsylvania is shaped the way it is, and why our communities are located where they are, and why they're called that name. And some of those types of things are just really very important, I think, to know and understand. And so that's why I want to get into what a docent is and how people can be a part of this effort to protect and preserve our historic resources. So much like the Moravian Historical Society, I know many museums and historic sites enlist people, whether they're volunteers or they're on the payroll, to do exactly like we witnessed in the video, where they dress in period costume. They might play a character, a historical character from history. But really what they are teachers, correct? They want to share some knowledge and answer people's questions. So what exactly is a docent? And, maybe what would be a modern understanding of that word? Susan, do you want to tackle that?
Well, sure. I think you hit the nail on the head there. A docent really is primarily an educator, right? Somebody who leads our interpretive tours. They need to have a real in-depth knowledge of our collections and the history. They need to be able to engage in visitors with the history that we share. So really, we're talking about teaching skills, education skills.
For sure. So what are some things that people could do who might be interested in getting a job or a volunteer position like that? Like, what do you need to know to become a docent somewhere?
You want me to take that one again, or Rusty, do you want to chime in?
I think first and foremost, you have to have the willingness to serve. I think the word docent while it suggests a teacher, it also suggests someone who is in service, and providing that willingly. Most museums and historical societies will call for volunteers, in their newsletter and their community social media pages or whatever, and that staffing is very important, especially in smaller organizations, to help keep the doors open and to make sure there are hours that the organization is open, that people can take advantage of the resources that we have. A lot of these museums and historical societies have fairly expansive grounds, so they are noticeable in the community. They take a pretty big footprint in some of them. There is a training aspect to becoming a docent. Usually the staff at an organization have the responsibility of passing on the knowledge, but it does start with that curiosity and willingness to sign up and to learn and to teach. As Chaucer's clerk was described, gladly would he learn and gladly teach. That's kind of what a docent ends up doing.
Yeah.
So if I could just piggyback on that, I would say, like, for us, you asked, what it takes to be a docent. For the individual should really have a passion for the history that we're sharing, right? For us, there's a lot of information that needs to be learned. It's a pretty extensive history. And so it's important that they enjoy learning about the history. They should also have a real sincere and genuine interest in people of all ages and backgrounds. So really, we're looking for tour guides who have the ability to provide an interactive museum experience. We're not talking about somebody who just has the ability to memorize a script, right? They need to be responsive to the audience's interests and needs. So that includes having a tolerance or respect for people of all different points of view. Our museum tour in particular can cover some topics that could be controversial, so you need to be sort of willing to be tolerant and listen to people's viewpoints and engage in a conversation.
Yeah.
I would also mention, we're saying tour guide, but Amy, you also mentioned that, or docent, tour guide. We recently switched from using the term docent to using the word tour guide, because we were a little concerned that docent was becoming kind of one of those insider museum terms. Mm-hmm. And we really wanted to broaden our appeal to younger audiences or non-museum folks who might not be familiar with the term docent. Mm-hmm. So, this program is great to sort of bring awareness to that, but we're using tour guide now as sort of interchangeable with docent.
Yeah, and I think, as someone who loves to visit historic sites wherever I go, especially all over Pennsylvania, I think that is important to understand that there's kind of a wide sense of different ways that people can really enhance the experience of visiting a place where something important happened, or where it's a landmark of some kind that tells a story. So no matter what the position is called, really what it boils down to is people sharing their passion and their knowledge. I was probably one of those annoying kids that asked hard questions. And I will fully, say that one of the reasons that I am still very, very passionate about learning everything I can about history is because as a kid, my family liked to travel, and I can still remember visiting places where people were dressed in period costume and being truly, truly whisked into a different time as a child. And I think fully understanding that they were real people in the modern world, but just it brought things to life for me so much. I grew up in an old house that was 200 years old, and I had such an active imagination that I suppose there's some part of me that understands why, as an adult, dressing up like a character from the past would be a really wonderful way to share that passion
Yeah.
with others. And I think it is important. You talked about sensitive topics and controversy, and I think this is a really important time in history where there is a lot of conversations going on about which version of history are we going to share and which point of view is take. And I think it is important for people to have an understanding that not everybody would come to a place and see it as a good thing that this happened here, or they might have some of their own heritage connected with the good and the bad of those stories. And so having a live person who can interact in a way to help shed a little light on those types of things, I feel like is a particularly effective way to preserve those historic sites.
Yeah, I think our tour guides or docents, they really bring the history to life for our visitors. I had some groups in over the weekend who actually made that same comment. You're right about the sometimes challenging topics, but I find that those sometimes are the most interesting for visitors. They really are engaging, and so our visitors were sort of grateful for the opportunity to have that more in-depth knowledge that they were given with our tour guides. They mentioned if they had just gone through and read the labels or the panels, they would not have gotten the same sense of the history and the story there. So it really does, like I said, bring it to life. It's a nice thing that we can do.
Yeah. So Rusty, maybe you could shed a little light for us. This is maybe not a question that I told you I was going to ask, but what qualifies something as a historical society or a museum, or how does what's the qualifications for becoming a member? Because I've seen everything from the blue and yellow landmarks, posts and signs on the side of the road, to intricate compounds of places where you can learn about stuff. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the variety of ways that people can encounter Pennsylvania history.
Well, that's a lot, Amy.
Gotcha.
For museums, I think Pennsylvania is blessed because of our long history as one of the original colonies. So we have organizations that are among the oldest in the country here. The American Philosophical Society, Carpenters Hall, Moravian Historical Society, Reading's Berks County History Center is a very old history center. But if you ask museum people to define museums, they would make a committee about it and they would talk about it for months. And this goes on. There's an international committee on museums that published a definition of museums, and not everybody agrees with it. And here in the United States, we have a national association that has tried to define them. And here in the state, we have avoided that because we realize that it's folly. We have privately owned museums in Pennsylvania. If you may recall, P.T. Barnum, before he was known for being a circus guy, ran a private museum of oddities. We have private museums in a lot of communities, and sometimes those transition. When the founders pass on, it will transition to a nonprofit museum. Like most of our museums are. There's no real requirement to be a museum. People are trying to start museums all the time, and museums are also fizzling out at the same time. Museums don't always last forever. Oftentimes their collections will be taken on by another organization and continue to serve the public. But museums are kind of living things, so it's hard to define what exactly they are. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I appreciate that very much, because
It's a hard one.
Well, but I think it's also important for people to understand that there might not be this kind of standard idea of how you can encounter history. We're talking very much about stewardship and protecting and providing conservation of these stories. And I think any good story requires a continuing conversation. So the fact that museums come and go and that, different aspects of it, I think it's important that people are still evaluating those artifacts. They're still digging. I know there's still archaeological digs going on in places that there might be layers of history and layers of communities in the same spot in the ground. And all of that is worth learning about. So I think that's an important part of the stewardship and one of the reasons why I think it's important that we continue to support museums, whether you volunteer as a docent or you get a job there as a tour guide, but also museums are nonprofit organizations that deserve support. I think the advocacy you mentioned, Rusty, is important too, that running the business of a museum is important. We want people to be able to encounter them in a way that is safe and respectful, and all of those types of things, I think is really excellent. So let me throw it a little more broadly then, that, today we wanted to talk a little bit about what a docent is, but that's not the only way that you can support your museums as a volunteer. What are some other ways that people can get involved in supporting and protecting and conserving history?
Well, that's a great question. And so thanks for asking that. I would say it starts with an awareness of the amazing history and resources here in Pennsylvania. So thank you for highlighting this topic today. But here in the Lehigh Valley, we're part of an organization called Lehigh Valley Passport to History. It's a partnership of nearly 80 historic sites and museums in and around Pennsylvania's Lehigh Valley. That's a big number, 80. It just gives you the idea of how rich our cultural resources are. So first step, find out what's in your area. And as you mentioned, many of Pennsylvania's historic sites are small, and they rely on volunteers to carry out their missions. Here at the Moravian Historical Society, our volunteers help with caring for our buildings, caring for our grounds. They help with our publications, our collections, our finances. Really, we have volunteers who are involved in all aspects of the organization. So I would encourage folks, if you're interested in becoming involved, there's likely an organization out there who could really use your skills, no matter what the skills are.
And I imagine that your experience at the Moravian Historical Society is not unique, that there's probably some group just like yours in every single county all across Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And so a Google search is good. I'm also intrigued by what you said about the passport. I feel like it goes without saying that conservation of historical resources is important for tourism and the local economic development, that there's quite a lot of contribution that these sites bring to the local communities in the modern sense, that it certainly brings a lot of visitors to your little piece of the earth.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have visitors from all over the world.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing that's really important. As the tour guide or a docent, they're really the ambassador for the organization. They're the first point of contact. And, this might be somebody's first introduction to the topic, to the area, to the, all of it. And yeah, it's a great resource.
For sure. For sure. Next year is a big year for the United States of America. I know you're all tuned in quite a bit to the 250 years celebration next year. I know there's been a lot of conversation, and I feel like Pennsylvania, Keystone State in every sense, will be a big part of this celebration. So what are some things that people could maybe do in their own communities? Not that they need a special celebration to go and enjoy it, but just some things that people should look for. What should they Google?
Yeah, I think those milestones are really a great way to get people paying attention a little bit more, and making them more aware of our historical resources. So I think it's a great opportunity for organizations to bring new visitors in and potentially engage new volunteers, new people in with the organization. We have, I'm sure, there's the PA 250 has a website here, and we also have a Lehigh Valley 250 website that will have all of the various events and things going on. A lot of our historical societies and museums in the area have been planning for this for a couple of years now. So we have special exhibitions coming up. We have programs, speakers, festivals, events, you name it. There's a lot going on, and it shouldn't be too hard for folks to find the listing in their area.
Yeah. I imagine there'll be lots more opportunities to get involved as well with all these special events and special exhibits. And so there's no greater time than now to start inquiring if you're interested in doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for sharing your time and your unique perspective on ways that people can get involved in Pennsylvania. Stewardship is really critical, I think, and I know that Pennsylvania Healthy Lands encompasses so much more than the actual soil underneath our feet, and I think this is such a great example of how important it is for us as individuals to get involved and to share what we can, and even just visiting historic sites and things that the number of visits counts as a part of stewardship. And so I encourage everybody who's listening to get out there and see what's going on in your community and ask the question of what happened here long ago. I think there's much to learn in doing that. And if you're inclined to volunteer or look for a job as this, I think there's plenty of those kinds of opportunities out there to express your stewardship. This year, Pennsylvania Healthy Lands, we've been talking a lot about how many hands make healthy lands. And so I think considering how you can support our historic resources is one way that you can participate in all of that. So thank you all for tuning in. We will upload the video recording of this live presentation. So if you want to go back and revisit something that we said or share it online, we will certainly make that available. So thank you again, Rusty and Susan, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.